reborn as the SSS Ghost Queen. The first thing I did was to impregnate the campus beauty. Only because 30 days later, a bizarre apocalypse would descend upon the world. Yet you arrived prematurely into this world. To survive, you could only develop in the beauty's womb. When the innocent beauty discovered she was pregnant, she wanted to abort you. At this moment, you had just arrived in this world. Then you heard a prompting sound ringing in your ear. Detecting the current state of the host. Infinite purification system binding successful. The host's current state is extremely poor. Please, within 30 seconds, find a living host to parasitize and develop in. Immediately after, a number 30,292,827 popped up before your eyes. The crimson digits were jumping and changing. At that moment, a figure caught your eye. She wore a neat school uniform. Her eyebrows were curved, her nose was small and elegant, and this young lady was the Academy's shining ice beauty. Unfortunately, her personality was too cold. She always had an unapproachable, icy expression. Added to her lofty family status, she was someone people could only admire from afar. At this moment, you glanced at the numbers on the panel before you. Only 3 seconds remained. You directly chose Robin. Then you only felt the world around you twisting. And finally fell into a daze. In the last moment before your consciousness faded to black, you heard a system prompt. Host Robin Luo. Parasitization successful. As Robin Frost was walking towards the school gates, her mind experienced a momentary daze. It felt as if something had entered her body. But she didn't dwell on it too much. Probably just the stress getting to her. She raised her feet and got into a luxurious black car, leaving under the admiring gazes of the young men. 2 weeks later, your consciousness was muddled, but you could hear intermittent prompts. Robin Frost ate an egg, growth 3. Robin Frost drank juice, growth 1. Robin Frost burned incense for ancestors. Inhaled smoke, growth increased. Faint memories awakening. Current state infant. As more and more prompts accumulated, your mind finally regained clarity. And at this time, a panel appeared before you. Name, time period, status, infancy. Life, 10 months, talent, wall crawler, awakening. Growth value reserve, 230. Special reminder, the host state and talents can be upgraded using growth value. Special reminder to growth value can be obtained by devouring life from food. Different grades of food and life yield different growth value. Special reminder 3, bizarre apocalypse in 16 days. Upgrade quickly to survive. After viewing the system panel, you had a basic understanding. At this moment, Robin Frost suddenly felt terribly nauseous in her stomach. She hurried out of bed towards the bathroom and violently threw up. After vomiting, she felt a bit better. She didn't know what was going on recently. Always wanting to eat something sour, she should go to the hospital for a checkup. After vomiting twice more, Robin Frost thought, forget it, I'll just go now. After vomiting, she felt a little better. She didn't know what was going on lately. She often felt like eating something sour. She should go to the hospital for a checkup when she had time. But she felt an urgent need. Binhan vomited again twice. Never mind, never mind. She might as well go now. Then she feebly knocked on her mother's bedroom door. After informing her of the situation, mother and daughter, surrounded by bodyguards, hurried towards the hospital. The Luo family was a formidable force in Grizzly City. When the hospital learned that the young lady of the Luo family was coming, they immediately had the on-duty expert attend to her personally. After hearing her symptoms, they immediately took a blood test and abdominal ultrasound. It was already midnight when they finished. Suddenly, based on the data from our various tests, Miss Luo appears to be pregnant. The doctor placed the abdominal ultrasound on the table, where the outline of an infant had been clearly marked in red. Binhan's pretty face paled. Her mother Fingling One was also stunned. She blurted out, abort it. We must abort it. Have the surgery tonight. There must be no delay. And please keep this confidential. The doctor smiled professionally and said, I understand the gravity of the situation. Madam, please rest assured. And after hearing their conversation, you were utterly baffled. They want to abort me? The calamity hasn't even arrived yet. Yet I'm already facing the threat of abortion. At this moment, you tentatively ask the system, "Hey, system, if I get aborted, can I be reborn a second time?" And the system's cold voice responded, "No, you will be completely eliminated. Infinite evolution. The system will automatically unbind." Hearing this, you felt helpless. Fortunately, at this moment, Binhan spoke up, "No, no. How is this possible?" Emotionally agitated, she ran out of the office and rushed to the rooftop of the hospital. Feeling the night wind on her face, she gasped for air and began to cry. Binhan was truly devastated. From a young age, she had been doted upon by her family. With her looks and demeanor, she was the cream of the crop among her peers. She had received countless love letters, but she had never opened a single one. So how could she have gotten pregnant? Yet the test results were right before her eyes, shattering the young lady's pride. Beyond her glamorous exterior, once news of this spread, countless people would mock her. And how would her own family look at her? Unable to make a sound, you began recklessly absorbing nutrients from Binhan's body. When Binhan suddenly felt dizzy and faint, just as she was about to collapse, Fingling came over and embraced her daughter, saying, "Silly girl." She knew her daughter was in no condition to make a decision that night. Under tight security, mother and daughter returned to the villa. Now lying in bed, Binhan's pale face said, "Mom, I'm hungry." Quick-witted Fingling instructed the maid to bring bird's nest soup. Soon it arrived. He knew his daughter was in no condition to make a decision that night. Mother and daughter, under tight security, returned to the villa. Now lying in bed, Binhan's pale face said, "Mom, I'm hungry." Quick-witted Fingling instructed the maid to bring bird's nest soup. Soon it arrived. This time Binhan sat up halfway, ravenously devouring the bird's nest soup until the last drop. But her stomach grumbled again with hunger. So you began accelerating your absorption once more. After guzzling 7 or 8 bowls of bird's nest soup, Binhan's ravenous and weary feeling was finally alleviated. And your absorption had likewise reached its limit for now. After all, you were still in your infancy stage. At this time, Fingling said with puzzlement, "We'll get another checkup tomorrow. Perhaps tonight's test report had an error." Hope rekindled in Binhan's eyes. She felt the report must be mistaken. She had always remained pure and untainted, not to mention her body. Even her soul had never been fond of anyone else. How could she possibly be pregnant? The next day, accompanied by Fingling, they went to the largest hospital in Grizzly City. There she underwent the most precise instrument examinations. But the report still showed she was pregnant. This time Binhan fainted directly. The first time there was a possibility of error, but not the second time. In the luxurious VIP sick room, Binhan stared blankly at the ceiling as she received an for drip. According to this hospital's tests, her body was severely malnourished. So they had given her the best nutrients. Fortunately, the doctor said Binhan's condition was too poor to undergo an abortion surgery now. They could consider it once her health improved. So you dared not stop for even a moment, ravenously devouring Binhan's bodily nutrients. Finally, you were able to speak. "I can talk now." The next second, your voice abruptly rang out. And Binhan suddenly sat upright, her dilated pupils gradually refocusing. How could she hear someone talking? In this tens of square meter luxurious sick room, she was alone. At this moment, you vexedly said, "Binhan, listen to me. Don't be nervous. Don't scream. Whoever is playing tricks, come out right now." Binhan looked around warily, grabbing a cup from the bedside table to feel a bit safer. You then explained, "I'm in your belly right now. In about 2 weeks' time, the anomaly will descend upon this world completely. I know this is shocking to hear, and you may not even believe it, but the entire grizzly population lives in dread. Surely you've sensed something is amiss?" Binhan responded, "Prove it to me." You calmly said, "Lift up your clothes and see." Binhan frowned deeper in disbelief, but used the covers to shield herself as she cautiously lifted her top, exposing her pale belly. Suddenly her expression turned horrified. There was actually a face on her stomach. "Now do you believe me?" you asked, as the mouth area moved. "In sync with your speech. You're not pregnant. I'm parasitizing you. Now you believe it." My words move in sync with the mouth on that face. "You are not pregnant, but rather, I have parasitized you. Just wait until I grow up. I shall become an imperial ruler in that bizarre age to come. What will the mundane world amount to? Hearing this, Luo Bingen, her cheeks flushed, asked, "So you've been in my body all along?" For a girl, this is too hard to accept. You said, "I am but in my infancy now. Once I've grown, perhaps I can leave." Then Luo Bingen asked again, "What should I do?" You tersely replied, "I need nourishment." "All right, I'll believe you for now." Being from an influential family, Luo Bingen had seen much turmoil. She could sense the abnormality, the disturbance, like a looming bear. And that news item, so chilling, it made her bones shiver. Perhaps what you said was true, that a bizarre age was indeed coming. At that moment, Feng Lingwan entered, his expression grave. Seeing this, Luo Bingen asked him, "What happened? Your face looks troubled. News of your pregnancy has spread through unknown means. The family knows and their stance is harsh. But they think it's just a rumor still, not believing you're actually pregnant. So if we get an abortion now, we may reverse this crisis." "But I am pregnant," Luo Bingen said. "I don't want an abortion." Uttering those words brought shame. Yet Luo Bingen knew, with your presence, she'd have the advantage in the coming unknown storm, if you were telling the truth. From her intuition, it seemed you were not lying. But in this uncertain, unpredictable moment, she could not be completely sure, before the bizarre truly manifested. Luo Bingen decided to stay silent. Only then could she weather the coming storm intact. Feng Lingwen's eyes widened, disbelieving her words. "Do you know what you're saying? The family may channel all resources to your cousin instead." After a pause, Luo Bingen said, "Give me 10 days' time. In our talk, you clearly stated the bazaar will fully descend upon this world in 10 days. Helpless, Feng Lingwan said, "All right, I hope in this matter you can remain calm as before." His daughter was ever aloof and strong-willed, speaking little, but decisive in her actions. Whatever she decided, no one could dissuade her. After a few reassuring words, the worried father left. With the door closed, quiet returned to the room, with just the two of them inside. "You need to prove your abilities to me." He didn't speak much, but his actions had their own consciousness. No one could sway the decisions he made. The intelligent Yuan Yu comforted his daughter with a few words and left. After the door to the sick room closed, the room fell silent again. "Now there were only the two of us in the room. I need you to prove some abilities to me, even if it arrives completely bizarrely. As you said, in 10 days. What can you bring to me?" Luo Bingen slowly regained her former calm. "You then explained that you were in your infancy and needed sufficient nourishment to grow and develop. Currently you only had one ability, which was haunting. Then you continued, moreover, I'm currently residing in your womb. Isn't that proof enough?" Luo Bingen pondered for a moment. With such an outrageous, bizarre thing happening, what was impossible? At that moment, you suddenly said, "Someone's coming." "Probably a nurse, right?" Luo Bingen was still deep in thought, not paying attention. "Then you said with a wry smile, they have murderous intent. Perhaps a chance to prove it to you." When Luo Bingen heard you mention murderous intent, her thoughts withdrew from contemplation and became alert. At the same time, in the hospital corridor, a man in a black tracksuit appeared stealthily. Black gloves tightly covered his hands. Hugging the wall, his footsteps were light and slow. He arrived in front of a sickroom door, looking around to confirm no one was there. He finally stopped. From his wide sleeves, a dagger slid silently into his palm. Gripping the dagger, his gloved hand turned the doorknob and entered. He found Luo Bingen lying asleep on the sick bed. Below his mask crept a cold smile. He then gripped the dagger tightly and crept closer. But after entering, he didn't take 2 steps before his head slammed into something hard yet invisible. The man nearly cried out in pain, but swallowed it through sheer professionalism. Reaching out, he felt an invisible wall. Puzzled, he wondered why there was an invisible wall, but didn't dwell on the question. Doubts aside, The man didn't linger, not wanting to waste time. Gripping the dagger, he went around, heading forward. Whack! His head hit another invisible wall. The man grew annoyed this time, and could only go around again. He just wanted to finish the job quickly and enjoy the reward. So he forcefully swallowed his anger and acted more cautiously. One hand grasped the dagger, the other extended, carefully feeling his way forward. Is this your ability? The beautiful ice princess's expression now showed excited ripples. That dagger-wielding man kept circling the small sick room. He kept spinning around in place, although the two were only a few meters apart. He could not approach no matter what. At this moment, you said regretfully, "It's a pity I don't have enough zombies. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to see your shadow." Hearing this, Nobin asked what to do next. "We can't just let him keep spinning around in the ward." And you hesitated with tears, saying, "Could you lend me your body for a bit?" Hearing this, Luoban was both shy and angry, then said, "You're dreaming." No one of the opposite sex has ever dared to say such things in front of him. Then, you said helplessly, "What are you thinking? I am an anomaly, possessing powers beyond human imagination. Although now in my infancy, I can still exert some influence." Hearing this, Luoban said awkwardly, "So? Lend it to you? Relax, here I come, with your words." Just as Luoban was about to protest, he felt a chill rush up from his abdomen, quickly spreading through every part of his body. He immediately lost control of his body. And at this moment, wearing a hospital gown, you got off the bed and walked, marveling at the body, saying, "So this is a girl's body? It's really soft." You even reached out and pinched it. But the next second, Luoban angrily shouted, "You pervert! Are you some kind of lecher? Don't touch my body. Just do what you need to do quickly." Hearing this, you hurriedly put your hands down and scanned the ward, your gaze finally locking on a fruit knife on the bedside table. At this moment, you controlled Luoban's body to walk over and tightly grasped the knife handle, turning to face the bewildered man. You swung the fruit knife and thrust it towards his heart with blinding speed. At the same time, Luoban's cry of shock echoed in your mind. "You dare kill him?" The man looked down, his eyes flashing with disbelief and horror, as the sudden blade, like the Grim Reaper's scythe, easily pierced his heart. He staggered and fell. At the same time, the system voice rang out again. "The man died by your hand. His remaining 53 years were reaped by you and automatically converted to growth. The current accumulated growth is 500. Seeing this prompt, you immediately spent all the growth upgrading talents. 500 growth consumed. Talent Ghost Wall somewhat skilled. Enables indoor concealment. The characters on the panel flickering. Soon, more information appeared. At this point, Luoban asked what to do with the corpse. Before he could finish, you made the body bite into the fallen man. Luoban screamed in shock and promptly fainted. "He's eating a person?" And you turned into an eerie state. Not only did you feel no discomfort whatsoever, but instead found the food before you exceptionally delicious. After you finished, you made Luo Bingen's body fall asleep. Not long after, the horizon gradually turned a pale white, and you lost control over this body. At this moment, Luo Bingen's soul returned to the lying body. The traces on the ground had also been wiped clean by you. This was your reminder that only 9 days remained until the complete descent of that eerie force. We must hurry and let me grow rapidly. Did you go burn incense to worship ancestors recently? When Yanuo Bingen paused slightly, then nodded, saying yes. What's wrong? He opened his eyes, a hint of puzzlement and discontent in his gaze. But you seemed not to notice Nuo Bingen's displeasure. Continuing to say, handle the discharge procedures. Being wealthy as you are, you should have some vacant houses, right? preferably a spacious, luxurious villa. Hearing this, Luo Bingen asked in puzzlement, "What do you need that kind of house for?" Then you answered, "To burn offerings." It won't be long now before Luo Bingen arrived at the villa, guarded by bodyguards. He then had all the bodyguards withdraw. At the same time, a small truck also slowly drove in. Its cargo area piled with all sorts of gold ingots, paper money, and incense sticks. Seeing these items, Luo Bingen could not help but feel a strange dread. Then you gently spoke to reassure him, "It's all right. Just think of it as getting used to." The scene after that eerie force descends. Practice stealing your heart. Hearing this, Luo Bingen let out a light snort. Though the unease in his heart was not completely gone, your reassurance brought him some comfort to safely deal with these underworld items. Luo Bingen specially had that shopkeeper prepare a sturdy iron barrel, specifically for burning these things. Then you said impatiently, "Let's start." Immediately after, Luo Bingen threw the paper money, incense, and paper ingots into the iron barrel, taking out a lighter to set them ablaze. The flames instantly roared to life, illuminating the entire villa, accompanied by billowing smoke filling the air. Various smells intertwined, permeating the whole space, making Luo Bingen's nose sting a little. However, to you, that scent was as enticing as an exquisite delicacy. As an eerie being, you had an irresistible craving for such smells. You then took a deep breath, as if savoring an indescribably delicious taste. At this moment, the system's voice also sounded. Luo Bingen inhaled an incense stick, growth 100. Luo Bingen inhaled a gold ingot, growth 5. Luo Bingen inhaled a stack of paper money, growth 100. A series of prompts. Luo Bingen inhaled deeply as he held a stack of paper. Growth value increased by only 100. A flurry of prompts popped up rapidly before his eyes, causing you great delight. Your thoughts were correct. Uncanny rituals indeed were needed to increase the growth value of his bizarre form. It's almost burnt out. Give Luo Bingen another reminder, let him awaken from his dreamlike state. He hurriedly threw the unopened paper money and gold ingots, all into the iron barrel. At the same time, strings of growth value increase prompts kept appearing endlessly. The growth value brought by these items required no intermediate process. Then you excitedly urged him not to stop, to continue speaking. "Well, it feels so good, no need to remind me anymore. Speak the words yourself." Luo Bingen furrowed his good-looking brows and said, "What are you talking about, child of the wild?" Until a.m. all the sacrificial items in the room were used up. Luo Bingen went from initial fear to eventual numbness. He simply lay on the living room floor, covered by a blanket, and fell asleep. Yet you remained energetic, this time netting a total of over 35,000 growth points. You then poured all the growth value into his stats. At this moment, your bizarre form underwent an unimaginable growth, making up for the lack of time, decreasing further. When the growth was fully consumed, you finally gave that final push. Immediately after, a personal info panel popped up. Name, lesser bizarre spouse, status youth. Main body lifespan, 3 years. Talent 1, spirit wall vision, orange talent. 2, puppet, not yet awakened. Indicates when spreading bizarre aura, you can invade target spiritual realm, turning them into your puppet. Growth value storage, 0. You then looked at the panel and said, "Not a bad talent. As for growth value, I need much more." When sunlight peeked through the curtain gap and shone on Luo Bingen's face, he slowly opened his eyes, went to the kitchen, opened the fridge. It was completely empty. Only then did he realize there was no food in this huge villa. And under your urging, Luo Bingen took out his phone and called the boss from yesterday to place another order. On the other end, the boss sounded excited. Upon learning Luo Bingen's order quantity was more than 10 times yesterday's, his voice brimmed with pleasant surprise. He immediately promised over the phone to have all the goods ready before sunset. After hanging up, Luo Bingen breathed a sigh of relief. He turned and went to the villa's garage, where a powerful SUV was parked. He got in the driver's seat, started the engine and sped off. At the nearest large supermarket, she selected many daily necessities, food, and water. With this highest level membership card, she could enjoy the supermarket's home delivery service. Gazing at the goods, she couldn't help but sigh deeply. The privileges of the wealthy in life were truly ubiquitous. When Luo Binhan returned to the villa, that boss had personally driven a much larger truck. Quietly waiting at the gate, the truck was piled high with all sorts of sacrificial offerings, one crate next to another. Soon, they moved all the goods into the villa. And this time, Luo Binhan brought the iron barrel to the kitchen. After sealing it, she turned on the strongest mode of the exhaust fan and began burning things again. In the blink of an eye, several days had flowed by like water. During this time, one truck after another loaded with sacrificial offerings arrived incessantly at this remote villa. The wafting smoke from the incense almost never stopped. By now, Luo Binhan's face was clearly much thinner. Her voice tinged with weariness. She said weakly, "Do you know how much wealth I've spent these past few days? The number has soared to millions." You replied calmly, "It doesn't matter. Your investment in me is absolutely worth it." As her growth value kept rising, you were busy in putting it into her state and talents. Then the system panel popped up again. The system panel popped up again shortly after. Name 17, status blue collision anomaly period, lifespan 10 years. Talent smelting blaze azure purity. Puppet blaze azure purity. Recollection blaze azure purity, growth savings bright. Personal information, changes on the panel. The result of investing those millions. The next step after the blue robust anomaly period is resentful bones. According to the system's explanation, this counts as officially entering the realm of a qualified anomaly. Ominous shadow is the new talent gained after entering the blue collision anomaly period. Whether to further advance the status or upgrade the talent to the next level. The growth value needed, converted to money, would probably require another 3 to 5 million. At this moment, your voice came from the abdomen of Luo Binhan. "I'm about to level up soon. Go ask your family for spirit medicines. 3 days left until the anomaly descends. Our time is precious." After getting the money, Luo Binhan vanished again this time. He directly spent the entire 5 million in his bank account, draining it completely, and now the descent of the anomaly was counting down. The 12 hours slipped through the fingertips like fine sand. Then you spoke. When the midnight bell tolls, the anomaly will utterly devour this world. Like a behemoth in the night. As you were conversing with Luo Binhan, the villa's gate was suddenly rudely pushed open from outside. "Old master, look closely. This is the granddaughter you pin such high hopes on." Pouring in endless effort. Yet her conduct is so wanton. Her studies are incomplete. But she's cavorting with a man of unknown identity, secluded in this villa. Even burning spirit money and ingots. Clearly conducting some mysterious ritual. If word of this spreads, wouldn't the outside world think that the Luo family is nurturing a mentally ill heir? The middle-aged woman's eyes glinted with malice, yet her expression feigned heartbroken disappointment. As if rebuking her unfilial descendant's self-deception. From now on, strip Luo Binhan of all family resources. This child must be disowned and expelled from the family immediately. Her parents stripped of duties, assets frozen. Never to set foot in Greyburn again. The white-haired elder, leaning on his cane, spoke coldly, without an ounce of affection for this granddaughter. With that, they turned and left. As the villa's door slowly closed, he temporarily put those complicated thoughts aside. Luo Binhan immersed herself again in burning the offerings, the rituals imbuing you with growth. The firelight cast her resolute features in an ever more mysterious, solemn light. It was nearing the anomaly's descent. Those who had mocked and scorned Luo Binhan today would soon face her merciless retaliation. She would sweep away all humiliation and grievance. Like autumn winds casting off leaves, throughout the villa, thick smoke billowed like a raging dragon. He would soon experience Lu Bing's merciless counterattack. Lu Bing wanted to sweep away all the humiliation and grievances, like autumn winds dispersing fallen leaves. Throughout the entire villa, thick smoke billowed, like a raging dragon, to accelerate the process. When Lu Bingen ordered previously, he had intentionally requested a few large gasoline cans from the boss. Now the fierce fire blazed, as if devouring everything. Lu Bingen stood before the fire, sweat pouring like rain, drenching his clothes. Then he took out his phone and called his parents. He had sent them a message earlier in the day. They said they would come as soon as possible. On the phone, his parents had now learned about the afternoon's turmoil and were very concerned about their daughter's condition. So they said on the call that they were already on their way, rushing over without stopping. At this moment, having accumulated enough experience, you just took a deep breath, then infused the experience into your state. In the next second, your body reorganized, entering a brand new realm. The vengeful spirit gained a new ability, soul-binding chains. And at this moment, your lifespan also reached 50 years. Right after that, Lu Bin reminded you that all the ritual supplies had been used up. There was no time now for the boss to deliver more. You don't need any for now, there are 15 minutes until the anomaly descends. Haven't your parents arrived yet? You had just asked. When car lights lit up the villa's courtyard, Lu Bingen hurried to open the gate. A luxury sedan worth over $1 million pulled into the courtyard. The lights turned off, a middle-aged couple stepped out. Seeing them, Lu Bingen relaxed and said, "Mom, Dad, you're here." Noticing their daughter's unusual behavior and the pungent smell of burning in the villa, they cautiously asked, "Daughter, what are you doing?" With unprecedented solemnity, Lu Bingen began, "Father, Mother, please listen closely to what I have to say. The world we live in is undergoing an unprecedented transformation. All those ominous signs and the recent undercurrents in the city, the endless strange rumors, they are all preludes to this change. They make people fearful, at a loss for what to do. Tonight, when the clock strikes midnight, the anomaly will unveil itself and descend upon this world. We cannot fathom how unrecognizable the world will become. It could be a rain of blood and chaos, or layers upon layers of anomalies. The pyramid built on money and power that existed before will vanish in that moment, as if it never was. And then, the next second, as the clock struck 12, that full moon hanging in the night sky, its roundness near perfection, that blood-red moon looked as if carved from fresh blood, suspended in the deep ink-black heavens, as if meticulously sculpted from fresh blood. It hung in the ink-dark, profound sky, crimson, piercing the eyes, writing that made one's heart race. Then the sky began raining. The raindrops were no longer transparent, but blood-red, as if drops of blood poured from the heights, dyeing the entire world in terrifying hues. At the same time, all sorts of malicious sounds rang out, like a melody from the depths of hell, or the howls of myriad vengeful ghosts, sending chills down one's spine. The next second, the whole world descended into chaos. And at that moment, Nuangnan struggled to remain calm as he said, "Daughter, how did you come to know all this?" Then Luo Bingen's clear voice rang out, "Come out." As the words fell, the room's temperature suddenly dropped, as if a cold wind blew up from the depths, carrying a bone-chilling chill. They stared intently at the figure, seeing it gradually become clear, finally revealing a lifeless, utterly eerie face. Luo Bingen then said, "He is the child in my womb. This young man called 17 is from the same school as me. He is our greatest barrier in the strange era." Luo Bingen recounted the whole story from beginning to end. The two gradually understood the reason behind her seemingly unorthodox behavior lately. Nuangnan then praised, "Daughter, you are our pride. Your grandfather actually stripped our family of wealth and status. For this reason, just to cultivate your so-called aunt." He gently took Luo Bingen aside, voice low and cautious. "Can this student really be trusted?" You replied, voice low and ominous. Rest assured. I am a parasite in Luo Bingen's womb. Now, I am deeply linked with his body. Harming him would gravely injure me. Moreover, before becoming a vengeful ghost, I too was a living, breathing person. Luo Wangnan was momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected his voice to be so quiet, yet still be picked up by the jade instrument. Feng Linwan's face flushed as she said, "So what should we do next?" Luo Bingen replied, "In this villa, I've stockpiled ample water and food. Enough for the three of us for a month. I suggest we stay here for now, observing the situation. After all, with the full onset of this strange era, nobody knows what the future may hold. We need time to observe the world's changes and leave ourselves a buffer." At that moment, the night's blood rain, a prelude to the apocalypse, finally gave way to a pale glow on the horizon. The quiet curtain fall, as the morning sun pierced the clouds and bathed the earth. That crimson moon hanging in the sky also silently vanished, as if last night's tumult was but an illusion. At the same time, inside a towering office building in the city of Grey Bear, a middle-aged man dressed in a crisp suit, his face pale as paper, dark circles hanging heavily beneath his eyes, clearly exhausted beyond measure, approached the door of his boss's office. He took a deep breath and gently knocked on the door. There was no response as it opened, revealing a portly figure. It was his boss, a rotund middle-aged man with a face full of flab and a protruding belly. He was completely absorbed, staring at the computer screen, his fingers tapping rapidly on the keyboard. The middle-aged man opened his mouth, his voice trembling as he said, "Boss, I arrive at the company at AM sharp every morning, and don't leave until PM at night. It's been a whole month without any rest. Why are you firing me? I have elderly parents and young children. If I lose this job, I don't give a damn about your elderly parents or young children." The boss cut him off impatiently, his eyes never leaving the screen. "The company has hired some young people recently. They're far more useful than a man in his 40s like you." Before the middle-aged man could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt a tightness in his chest. Something seemed to be constricting his chest, just as he was about to protest. Everything went black before his eyes. The entire world became a blur. And this stone-hearted boss finally tore his gaze from the screen. Hey, you're not trying to fake an illness, are you?" He glanced dismissively at the middle-aged man, now crouched on the floor, a mocking smile curling his lips. "At your age, still pulling stunts like this? You really have no shame." And then, it happened. A twist of fate. The middle-aged man's eyes burst open, black and red blood gushing from his eye sockets, staining his horror-stricken face crimson. He lunged towards his boss, his hands viciously clasping the boss's throat. The entire process lasted a mere 4 seconds. Yet it was enough to chill everyone present to the bone. The boss didn't even have time to let out a scream before the middle-aged man tore through his throat with his teeth. Blood gushed forth like a torrent, soon staining the entire office crimson. And the middle-aged man's hands and clothes. What was truly shocking, however, was that the middle-aged man began devouring the boss's corpse, crunching even the bones to dust, then swallowing the entire mass whole. The colleagues peering in from outside screamed in horror at the gruesome sight and fled in panic. The entire office building descended into chaos and terror in an instant. Meanwhile, in a residential area, a young couple, married less than half a month, were watching television in their home, completely unaware of the events of the previous night, having gone to sleep early. It wasn't until they woke up the next morning and scrolled through social media that they learned of the harrowing incident that had occurred the previous night. At that moment, a knock sounded at the door. The husband rose and went over. It was the neighbor next door. He opened the door. The husband asked politely, "Is there something I can help you with? May I come in and sit for a bit?" The neighbor was a middle-aged man, staring at a shiny bald head. Not waiting for the husband's reply, the bald man had already swaggered his way inside. To keep the neighborly peace, the husband could only close the door. His wife shot him a helpless glance, He was wearing only a thin nightgown, with no underwear beneath. The husband shook his head, indicating he had no choice. He knew this neighbor had a bad reputation in the community. Nearly 40 years old, still a bachelor. But he was a neighbor all the same. He couldn't just kick him out. After the man walked in, could he? How awkward that would be next time they met. You're truly blessed, the bald neighbor said, eyeing the young wife. Fair skin, great figure. As he stepped inside, the bald neighbor narrowed his eyes. The husband's face darkened at his words. He scowled. So what brings you here? If there's nothing, please leave. The young wife hurriedly stood and headed for the bedroom. The nightgown she wore was rather revealing in nature. Quite short, ending at her thighs. The bald man then laughed. My apologies if I was inappropriate. But I did come with something to discuss. You must have heard of my reputation in the community, he said. A man almost 40 years old, still a bachelor. Everything I have, I earned with my own two hands. I came today to ask your wife for a favor. I'm sure you wouldn't mind, would you? Besides, I quite fancy her. I often think about her at night, can't sleep. The young wife, upon hearing this, staggered, stopping in her tracks. She glared at the bald neighbor, angry and shocked. Her husband, unable to contain himself any longer, raised his fist and struck the neighbor's face. But the bald neighbor's right hand suddenly transformed into the shape of a cleaver. Slashing down in front of him, the husband's body sprayed a large cloud of blood. He stumbled back several steps, then fell flat on his back. The bald neighbor purposely let him linger, not letting him die right away. Then he grabbed the young wife's body, his hand transforming into a sharp black shape, viciously and madly assaulting her. For over 2 hours, the husband heard his wife's agonizing screams. The husband, soaked in blood, his lifeless eyes bulging, no longer had a glimmer of life in them. The young wife's lower body was nearly torn apart. A gruesome, unbearable sight. And all this occurred in less than half a day. The entire city of Grayville descended into utter chaos. All manner of monsters were running rampant. People being killed in the streets non-stop. The whole city had become a hellish nightmare. Fortunately, the signals, power, and other basic infrastructure had not been affected. Many survivors found temporary safe havens and began monitoring outside information. A catastrophe of unimaginable scale had struck globally. After an investigation by the authorities, it was found to be closely linked to last night's gentle rain and the full moon. The blood rain was a special kind of parasite. Some invaded human and animal bodies and food, immediately causing various types of diseases. Some were able to preserve the host's sanity, while the rest had devolved into evil spirits. Those uninfected or still sane are urged to secure their doors and windows and await rescue. This global catastrophe has been named the parasitic frenzy. At this moment in the villa, you and the others watched the broadcast with grave expressions. It seemed the global environment had become extremely hostile. Many humans now possessed extraordinary, bizarre abilities. And at this moment, you coldly said, while the villa still has ample supplies, we must go out and find more provisions before we deplete them completely. Otherwise, we'll be in a very passive position. You also had some other thoughts. Since malicious supernatural things can greatly amplify these bizarre bodies, then in this bizarre era, hunting and devouring evil spirits and monsters, could using Jaws paper and spirit money have the same amplifying effect? Just then, knocking came from the villa's door. Is anyone home? I'm so scared. Is anyone there? It seems there are monsters out there. Can you give me a place to hide? The people in the villa clearly heard. It was a girl's trembling voice. Can't you give me a place to hide? This time, everyone in the villa clearly heard it. It was the voice of a girl, tinged with a slight tremor. At this moment, Luo Bingen was not shaken. He calmly asked, should I open the door? After all, he was an elite nurtured by a great family. He had not a shred of maternal love, especially in such an extremely dangerous environment. The knocking on the door grew increasingly frantic. Please, open the door. It seems something is approaching me. I'm so scared, save me. And you said at this moment, open it. It's the breath of a living being. Then Luo Bingen walked over and opened the 3-door bolts one by one. At this moment, Luo Bingen suddenly cried out. Only because you had slithered into his body again, causing him to feel waves of nausea. Whenever you return to Luo Bingen's body, it would stimulate and make him uncomfortable. This time, Luo Bingen suppressed the churning feeling and opened the door. It was indeed a girl, trembling as she looked into the villa. Outside, the moonlight was blood red, staining the earth. The whole world had been utterly transformed into this guise. Normal during the day, at night it was like the underworld of hell, merged with the real world. At this moment, Luo Bingen asked, "Why are you alone outside?" "Your family? They were all killed by monsters. I barely escaped. But I can't shake off the monsters," the girl said, choking back sobs. Luo Bingen was about to let the girl in to take shelter, when a figure filled with resentful coldness abruptly appeared. At the same time, a black chain shot out and pierced straight towards the shadow in the distance. Then a hulking figure rolled out of the shadows and dodged the black chain. It then slowly walked out. "You actually discovered me. And you wasted no words, directly using ghosts and soul-binding chains to restrain this person." Facing this dreamlike scene, the half-human, half-monster was instantly stunned. Its eyes bulged wide, as if it had witnessed the most inconceivable sight in the world. And at this moment, each ghost abruptly released a soul-binding chain. The rustling sound echoed in the space, adding a sense of lethal chill to the silent night. The chains shot out like spirit snakes. The half-human, half-monster had nowhere to flee. It could only watch helplessly as several chains pierced through it. Then the ghosts forcefully dragged, ripping the monster's soul from its flesh. The soul was visibly shattered into countless fragments and devoured by the black soul-binding chains. The whole process was brief yet cruel. The monster wasn't even left a chance to scream. Luo Bingen devoured an ominous gain of 1888. Seeing this prompt, you couldn't help but ponder. Indeed, the demonic monsters everywhere are the true, perfect nourishment for this bizarre body. Then the girl's pleading voice rang out, "Spare me, please. All of this was forced upon me by that pig-headed monstrous creature that stole a human body. I never had any intention of harming you. If I don't do as he demands, he will kill me without mercy." The girl continued speaking with a choked voice. "I'm just an ordinary person, faced with these sudden monsters. To survive, I could only choose to obey their orders. If you spare me, I will leave immediately, never to be a burden to you. Please believe me, I really don't want to hurt anyone. But you opened your mouth and said, if we were just ordinary people, you might have killed us today. Once that pig-headed monster finishes with you, he'll take you to the next house. You seem pitiful, but you're actually a malicious spirit." Then you raised your hand, and dark chains shot out, piercing straight through the girl's head, dragging her soul out and devouring it clean. The girl's face instantly lost color, and she collapsed softly to the ground. In this chaotic and deceptive age, being kind and soft-hearted is the greatest harm to oneself. Then you raised your leg and kicked the corpse away, sending it flying more than 10 meters. At that moment, your form squirmed and burrowed back into Luo Bingen's belly, causing him an intense feeling of discomfort. Luo Bingen retreated back into the villa, closing the main gate behind him. These days, they dared not turn on the lights at night, fearing that any illumination might attract some entity. Then Luo Bingen gestured at his clothes and said, "I need to take a shower and change into clean clothes." Since coming to this villa, he hasn't showered very often. His daily task has been to burn various sacrificial offerings for you, completing the purification rituals. Now that we're about to go out on a mission, he must ensure he is clean and without odor. As he removed his clothes, his snowy jade-like skin was revealed, his flat abdomen without an ounce of fat. On it appeared a resentful ghostly face. Hot water poured down on the jade-like skin, its smooth whiteness appearing delicate and fragile. Meanwhile, your face moved about on Luo Bingen's belly. Pervert, can you close your eyes? It's so dark in the bathroom, I can't see clearly. Ah, to be young again. Why do bears' noses get sunburned easily? After showering, Luo Bingen changed into athletic wear. Probably influenced by you. My body temperature is only 15 degrees Celsius now. Luo Bingen checked with the thermometer again. Looking at the number, with a hint of concern. But my body has become much more toned and agile than before. As he said this, Luo Bingen put down the thermometer and bounced lightly, his graceful movements displaying his nimbleness. You responded, that should be a good thing. Under the blood moon, the bazaar will reign supreme. Let's go. The bazaar will reign supreme as the future's master. Let's go. At this moment, the wind whispered softly from the forest, accompanied by the rustling of leaves, making one's heart race involuntarily, as if something dreadful was lurking, deterring anyone from venturing in carelessly. Then Luo Bingen took a deep breath and said, there's a village to the southeast of the villa, let's explore there first. I think it's called Yang Village. You had to admire Luo Bingen's superb foresight and strategic planning abilities. Indeed, he was outstanding. After securing the suburban villa as a base, following the arrival of the bazaar, he immediately prepared a map of the surrounding area and kept it. He even did preliminary scouting, facilitating future movements. Now it was proving useful. At this moment, you also said, I will take over your body at any time. Luo Bingen called out, swiftly moving towards the direction of Yang Village, facing that pig-headed monstrous creature. Plus the news reports. At the advent of the bazaar era, you gradually realized there was a clear boundary between you and those demonic bazaar creatures. You knew the monsters fell into two categories. One had completely degenerated into bazaar puppets. Their former will swept away like the tide, leaving only the instinct to kill. The other struggled and barely prevailed. In the tug-of-war with the bazaar, their bodies granted extraordinary abilities, yet forever haunted by the specter of the bazaar's control. But your situation with Luo Bingen was completely different. The two wills coexisted within, intertwined, forming a unique balance. When you slipped in and resided within Luo Bingen's being, you would be shielded by an invisible barrier. Even that pig-headed bazaar monster could not sense your presence, despite also being a bazaar entity. Up ahead now, the outline of the village gradually appeared in the distance. It was an eerily quiet scene. The windows of every household were tightly shut, not a glimmer of light seeping through. This stillness and darkness felt oppressive, making one's heart race involuntarily. Luo Bingen's steps slowed unconsciously as he approached the village cautiously, each step small, wary, as if afraid to shatter the dead silence. At this moment, Luo Bingen's voice rang out. Do you sense anything? Though his tone was calm, it betrayed an underlying tension. And you responded in your heart. There are heavy traces of bazaar activity. Your intuition told you this village was not as tranquil as it appeared on the surface. Over this period of time, the tacit understanding between the two of you had reached an entirely new level. You could communicate through thoughts alone. No words needed to comprehend each other. And the next second, a howling screech exploded from nowhere. Another living one has barged in.